crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you for joining us tonight, talking about family law tonight. So if you know somebody that this may pertain to them, and it pertains to a whole lot of folks, give them a call. Let them know what our topic of conversation is tonight on the attorneys, because we've got a great panel of guests, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation, but it's better when you are involved in it. Ways you can do so at the bottom of your screen there. Also, don't forget Hollis Wright makes available each and every Sunday night during the attorneys. Attorneys are standing by live just to speak with you. So the way to get in touch with them, 844-LAW-TALK or 205-324-3600. That's the local number. So ways for you to get in touch with the attorneys from Hollis Wright who would love to speak with you. And we just love to hear from you as well. The show is always better when you are involved. Leading our conversation is the managing partner of Hollis Wright, Josh Wright. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too. Hope you had a great week.
I did. Thank you.
All right, so we have a regular. I'm really going to call her a host.
She really is.
She's a regular.
She needs no introduction.
Sure. There's no question. You know, Kayla Graben has been on our show multiple times. Was with our law firm as a clerk many years ago, long before she became a very successful lawyer, and we've loved her ever since, and she does such a great job. So first of all, thank you for being back on the show. I know you've been on a bunch, but you do such a good job that we keep bringing you back on.
Well,
that's got to say something, right?
I was actually thinking about it last night, and I said, I told my husband I cannot remember if this is my 6th or 7th time, but that's a good thing.
Well, we've done about 400 of these shows, so that's
it's not that many.
It's not you for 400, but we've done a bunch of them, and we're just excited to have you on to talk about family law. And interesting, I looked at the pre-production material. You add a new spin to each of these shows as we go, which is kind of cool.
I try to. The law is constantly changing. I'm constantly learning new things. That's the interesting thing about being a lawyer is the facts are different in every case, as you know. Yeah. And so I try to incorporate that into our series.
Well, we'll get into some of that stuff. Tell us just a little bit about your firm. And kind of what's going on at the firm right now and how you guys are doing.
Sure. So we are Massey, Stotzer, and Nichols is where I'm at now. We're located in Trussville. We have had some changes over the past year. We've merged with some new attorneys, and we've got about 14 or 15 attorneys, and that's not including our staff. We do a little bit of everything. I tell people it's easier to say what we don't do. We don't do bankruptcy, and we don't really do niche work like intellectual property and that type of thing. But we do a little bit of everything, and recently, one of our partners, Ann Durward, was elected as the president of the AAML, which is the American Academy of Marriage Lawyers or Matrimonial Lawyers. And so we're very proud and excited for that. So a lot of good stuff is happening.
One of the things I really like about her when she comes on, have you ever noticed how much she promotes other people at her firm other than herself?
That's every time.
All right, well, I'm going to promote her because she knows what she's talking about.
Does.
She's a good lawyer and doing a good job. All right, let's talk generally about this topic. We're going to be talking tonight about family law related issues, which includes divorce in that process,
right.
Child custody. I noticed you added some social media components to it.
Yes.
And even some how to manage pets in a family law dispute.
Yes.
And I'm okay with that. We need to talk about that. People care about their pets.
They do.
I know I care about my dog, right?
Yes.
So, all right, so jumping off point is just kind of in this topic, do you think it's a good idea generally to have lawyers involved if you are considering a split or a divorce? Is it good to go consult with a lawyer on the front end?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, just because usually just a simple consultation shouldn't cost you that much money. And you just may not know what all is involved, what the courts would have control over, what they wouldn't. A lot of times a divorce attorney or a family law attorney can kind of explain to you based on your assets and your family structure and your history and everything that's going on, sort of how things would play out, and it may change how you want to structure your divorce or your separation.
Do you find yourself being a counselor at times?
Yes.
I can only imagine that.
Very much
because
so.
I'm assuming there are times when your recommendation is, hey, look, let's delay this. Why don't you, because sometimes people probably come to you and they want reconciliation,
yes.
but they're trying to figure out how to get there, and you're able to kind of advise them to take a break and relax for a minute and see if you can reconcile, and then if we need to legally get involved, we'll do that.
Yeah, and I think that's where choosing an attorney is a very specific process and should be personal to you. Everybody is different. I'm sort of a tough love person, and so I find myself often having very frank conversations with people saying, this is the way you think it's going to go, and I'm telling you right now, it's not. And it may take them a little while to swallow that. But ultimately, you are a friend and a counselor. You are keeping very vulnerable pieces of information, and you're guiding somebody through a very difficult process, their family, and you're keeping it confidential. And so, that is where I feel like I am truly a counselor outlaw.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, and we talk about this a lot on the show. In fact, we just had a show where I remember talking about the reality of what a real counselor is, right? A counselor is not just a lawyer that's going to lead, guide, and direct you through the legal stuff, but also going to help you evaluate logically, and I think that's part of what we learn in law schools, how to rationalize and logically work our way through issues both legally, emotionally, and politically, because there are implications on all sides for a lot of these, especially in this context.
And having somebody that you're comfortable being vulnerable and really talking about some intimate stuff, somebody you trust but also that you can relate to, it's important. It's for sure. Let me ask this question. This is kind of interesting here. It says, we just moved to Alabama a year ago, but we're originally from Texas, and all of our family and friends are there. I'll be getting primary custody of my kids, and I and they want to move back to Texas where we have a support system, but my soon-to-be ex disagrees. What can I do?
Good question. So this comes up pretty good bit, and in my practice or cases I can think of recently that I've dealt with, it's not necessarily different states, but sometimes it's just as simple as we're here in Birmingham, but my family is back in Huntsville or Montgomery or Fairhope, and I want to go back there. So the court in Alabama pushes the presumption that it is in the child or the children's best interest to stay in their primary residence where they are now. Sort of part of that is the Parent-Child Relationship Protection Act, which basically says a child's best interest is to be around both of their parents. That is the presumption. Obviously, you can present evidence to the court that may help them find that it is in the child's best interest to allow you to go back to where you're from, if your support system's there, or if there's other factors involved, violence or abuse or that kind of thing, that you need to go back home. But the presumption is that child and children should stay where they're at. Now, you can separately agree. If your spouse agrees, or your soon-to-be ex agrees, then that's fair game.
Do you find the court oftentimes will take joint agreements if it's in the best interest of the child? They'll take joint agreements between the respective spouses into consideration?
Yes.
Okay. So that's part of probably what the process is negotiating some of these things between spouses. All right. One of the things that we jumped ahead of is, I know part of what Kayla does is also advising on issues of prenuptial agreements prior to marriage. When we come back, because I know we're getting ready to go to break, I want to talk just a little bit about that and how planning can be very important, especially in circumstances of second and third marriages for some people, and how that you can eliminate a lot of headaches if you plan correctly.
Right. Also going to be talking about social media, do's and don'ts. Something you definitely want to do is follow Hollis Wright on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all the different places. A great educational, informational resource, and a really smart move for you to do that. So just search them and you'll find them there. Stay tuned. We've got more of The Attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
If you sustain an on-the-job injury, it can devastate you and your family. That's when you need the help of Hollis Wright. Our attorneys are right here in Birmingham and have decades of experience representing injured victims. We have handled on-the-job injury cases in every county throughout this great state and would be proud to help you. If you've been injured in an accident, always make Hollis Wright the first law firm you call. At Hollis Wright, results matter.
I started practicing law more than 20 years ago with a mission: advocate for personal injury victims in their darkest days. Recognizing that there were others who stood with me in that purpose, we built the Hollis Wright team from the ground up. Now with 25 employees here to help personal injury victims when they need it the most, our team is here for you. If you've been injured in an accident, always make Hollis Wright the first law firm you call. At Hollis Wright, results matter.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. Really appreciate you being with us tonight. Hey, before we head back to the conversation, attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live all throughout the program tonight. So a great opportunity to get some free, off-air, confidential legal advice. Take advantage of that. Josh?
All right, so when we went to break, I wanted to jump back for a moment, talk a little bit about prenuptial agreements, because I know that's something that you get involved in to help families plan before marriage. Now, I know there's some polarizing views on prenuptial agreements,
Sure.
But the reality is there are circumstances where you have an individual or individuals that have significant resources and assets that are coming together to create a union, that sometimes prenuptial agreements are something you've got to advise them on.
Sure. And that, yeah, it is a polarizing topic. I think it's stigmatized in that it carries with it this connotation that you are walking into marriage assuming it's going to fail and I want to keep everything to myself. And that's really not necessarily what it's about. You don't have to be incredibly wealthy to have a prenuptial agreement. I look at it as insurance. And you're right, a lot of people enter into prenuptial agreements, have them drafted up when it's their second marriage. They're older, they have their own careers, they have a significant amount of savings that they worked for, they have, you know, their own homes, their own vehicles, and in the event that something happens, they just want to keep the status quo. I also encourage people to remember you don't have to use the prenuptial agreement in the event that you do get divorced and you've had one drafted. It's just like insurance. If I have a fender bender, I may not want to file a claim on my insurance. I don't have to. It's there if I want to. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, you know, and David, a lot of times I have seen issues related to this topic come up in questions about retirement savings and whether or not that becomes part of marital assets if they get a second or a third marriage, and they want to make sure that's protected, for example, for their children down the road when you add a step parent to the mix. And so a lot of times this is legitimate planning that goes into the family dynamic of melding two families together with step parents to make sure that your children are also protected in the process long term down the road. So, I mean, sometimes it's just really, really good planning.
Right, yeah. Question we've got here: I don't want anyone to know the details of my divorce. Is that possible?
It is possible. I had a good long talk with one of the partners at our firm about this. It comes up from time to time, especially when divorces are messy, which they often are, unfortunately, and especially when people tend to be very private, or their families tend to be very sensitive, very conservative at times, and so there's good reasons for that. You can enter into a confidentiality agreement with your soon-to-be ex. You can both sign off on that. There can be penalties and fines built into that agreement. So if you break the confidentiality in some way, that person can be fined. The problem with that is, I tried to remind people, let's say we're married, you're a great husband, sorry, but you breached the confidentiality. In order to enforce that, I've got to take him to court. I've got to present evidence to the judge of how he breached that confidentiality in order to enforce it. So you're sort of letting the cat out of the bag anyways. I try to remind people what we file in a divorce is very simple and vague. It says, I want a divorce, we're incompatible, irreconcilable differences. I'm not going to list out all the bullet points of why they are, their marriage is breaking down. That's just not the way things are done.
Are all divorces a matter of public record?
They are. They can be on Alicourt, which is our database. So, I don't know that a layman could just get on and look that up. We have access to it as a part of being licensed attorneys in the state of Alabama. But essentially, yes. Now, you can, for certain reasons, ask that any court records, including a divorce, be under seal. And in that way, even certain attorneys who are not on the case cannot see those documents.
Talk a little bit about, and this has become more and more prevalent over the years, probably from the first time you were on the show years ago until now, it's even more prevalent, and that's social media. How do you address those issues? Because social media is such a critical component to the personality of a person, and it can be used against them and for them in certain divorce proceedings, can it?
It certainly can. I really don't know of any divorces these days where information that is within someone's social media accounts, whether that be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, is not requested in discovery or at times used in evidence at trial. That's just the way it is. Every one of us has some sort of social media account. And so I do encourage my clients to please don't post anything about what's going on. Maybe deactivate your account if you want to, if you can. Certainly pull back the reins on posting certain things. Change your passwords if you are going to keep them active, that kind of thing.
Yeah, has it gotten to the point yet where social media has started to be written into divorce decrees, like, for example, whether parents can post with children after a divorce decree, things like that? Has it gotten to that point yet? Or is it primarily just used as a resource for people to use it in divorce proceedings?
Primarily the latter, but you bring up a really good point, and I'm going to use that from here on out.
All right, well, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
The reason she gets on the show.
That's it.
I help her, right?
Good tip.
That's
I
it.
never thought about it that way, but that is a valid point, especially I think if you have young children, you may want to protect them in a way. Thank you.
Yeah, I see a lot of posting. You see a lot of posting when families are going through tough times, and I often wonder that. It's interesting. All right, so we're going to go to break for just a minute, and then when we come back, I do want to talk just a little bit about custody and some of the new things that have come into the law. We talked about like pet rights and whether, people care about their pets, and they want to spend time with their pets when there's a separation. Let's talk about some of this when we come back.
All right, we'll get into that. The final segment of The Attorneys coming right up. Stay with us, everybody.
I'm attorney Carter Clay with Hollis, Wright Law Firm. If you've ever been involved in a civil lawsuit or been a witness to an accident, then you may have been asked to give deposition testimony. In this week's Legal 411, we are answering the question, what is a deposition and why am I being asked to give one? Depositions involve the process of a person giving under oath testimony that is outside of court. The person giving deposition testimony is referred to as the deponent. Depositions are taken in the presence of a court reporter, and the court reporter records the testimony. After the deposition, the attorneys for the parties received a typed transcript that contains all the questions that were asked by the attorneys, as well as the answers given by the deponent. The purpose of taking depositions is to ensure that the attorneys for the parties have a full and complete understanding of the events giving rise to the lawsuit, as well as an understanding of the testimony that they can expect to hear from witnesses at trial. Another reason an attorney might want to get deposition testimony is that it allows the attorneys to better prepare for trial and to develop a strategy for presenting the case to a judge or a jury. At trial, the deposition testimony can be used in several ways. First, if a witness on the stand deviates from the deposition testimony, an attorney can use the deposition to impeach the witness. Also, if a witness forgets certain facts or events, the deposition can be used to refresh the witness's recollection. Finally, in some instances when a witness simply cannot attend trial, the trial judge has the authority to allow the deposition testimony to be read to the jury. If you are a party to a lawsuit and are requested to give deposition testimony, your attorney will likely spend a significant amount of time preparing you for the deposition process to put you at ease and make you feel comfortable. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WVTM 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. Time just flies on this show, especially whenever Kayla and Josh get together. Seems like for sure, but under 6 minutes remaining in the show. If you want to speak with the attorneys that are standing by live, again, you have less than 6 minutes to do so. So go ahead and make that call. Josh?
Hey, let's talk for a second about some things that you can't do if you want to have a prenuptial agreement, things you can't do in your prenup. Because I think there's a thought that if you have a contractual agreement on the front end, it's enforceable at all times. That's not necessarily true, is it?
No, it's not necessarily true. You can cover a lot of ground with the prenup, but one major thing that people often want to have in an agreement beforehand, especially if they're coming into a marriage with children who are already born, is custody and visitation. That cannot be determined in a prenuptial agreement. The courts in Alabama operate on, the presumption that we have to go by what's in the best interest of the child based on the current situation of the parents at the time of separation, and you can't know that at the front end.
I'm going to throw something at you that is a little off topic, and you may not have seen it in your practice, but I've often wondered if a husband and wife get divorced, wife gets remarried with children of the original husband, and the wife wants to have the child adopt the last name of the new spouse. Have you seen that before? And I'm just wondering whether or not, does that husband have to consent? Because you see that sometimes.
I do see that.
That's my family. That's what I went through when I was born. I was born different last name. Mom got remarried. My father, when I was 2, adopted me. That's why I'm Josh Wright now, as opposed to Josh Paulson. My oldest boy is named Paulson, and so we honored my dad that way. But I've often wondered that. Does there have to be consent? Do you see that at all in your practice?
You know, you and I are just so much like, maybe we should be married. I am the same situation.
Really?
So I took on the last name of my father, who's technically my stepfather, but I only know him as my dad. So there's kind of 2 ways you can do that. One is just a legal name change. And yes, the biological father, if he's around, if you know where he's at, if he's alive, that type of thing, will need to sign off on that. Or they can do what we've done, which is the step-parent adoption. And after that, your step-parent, for all intents and purposes, becomes your legal parent. My live birth certificate actually has my stepfather's name, not my biological father's name. And so again, though, the biological father, usually if they're around, know where they are, they will have to sign off on that.
That's interesting. I did not know that about you. All right, let's talk before we run out of time. I do want to talk, because this is kind of a new issue. Pets sometimes can be actually written into a divorce decree, can't they?
They can, yes. So in Alabama, the courts don't have the authority at this point to determine custody and visitation. Some states are moving towards that because pets are such an integral part of the family life. But one sort of tweak to that is, let's say I have a pet, I bring it into the marriage. If we get divorced, that's still legally my pet. If
Interesting.
That makes sense.
No, it does completely. And people take. I've learned in my practice, people take animals very, very seriously.
They do.
And we've got a pet at my house, and everyone in my family takes that pet very seriously.
It's like a member of the family.
We may have joked about it more 5 years ago, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. And it does show you, though, in some small ways, it shows how the law can change as society changes its priorities and the things that are important in society. And the law is a ever-moving thing, and it just shows that we're able to change with it.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
It's always, we run out of time every time Kayla's with us, but we have less than 2 minutes remaining. I want to give you both an opportunity just for a final thought. And Kayla, if you would, you first, please.
Sure, yeah. I would just encourage people, if you are going through a divorce or a separation, or if you're thinking about it, you and your spouse are thinking about it, consult with an attorney, consult with a counselor, a friend, but certainly an attorney, a family law attorney, and just see what your rights are, what the process would be like, what the expenses would potentially be, how it would affect where you live, your children if you have them, your pets if you have them, just to get an idea of what's ahead of you. I'm a big planner, so I say talk with someone, before you take those first steps.
Yeah, and I'd mention two things. One is, a lot of times we're advising clients that there are both legal ramifications of a decision, there are political ramifications of that decision, and there are financial ramifications of that decision. No better place than the divorce and family law part to see that. The other thing is this: if someone's sitting on the couch right now and has an issue associated with their marriage, they can always go back to court if somebody's not complying with their agreement. That's something we didn't talk about, but they can always go back to court.
We're about out of time. Thanks to both of you. Great stuff tonight.
Thank
Did a great
you
job.
So much.
Appreciate you being with us. Appreciate you being with us as well. We'll look for you next time right here on The Attorneys. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.